Hello and welcome to a new series. So regular viewers of the channel will know that I do a monthly albums that turn 20 at the moment it's 2022, and also that I was looking to carry this over to 2023, and I'd had a few ideas bouncing around in my head and I wanted to mix it up a bit. I didn't want to just stick with the 20 years. I did think about going to 50 years simply because there's a lot of albums that came out in 73 that had a real big impact on my musical preferences over the years. But I also wanted to mix it up a bit, and I also wanted to put the series out weekly and to just focus on one album rather than do a monthly one where I'm going through like several different albums. So the idea is to switch over to weekly, focus on one album. That's going to give me plenty of choice of ones to pick. The albums I'm going to pick have to be obviously albums that I like, but also that were commercially successful either at the time or subsequently, so that everybody else is going to be familiar with them as well, because I don't see a lot of point in me doing something that's super obscure no matter how much I like it. So those are sort of the criteria for picking them. It's just got to be something I like, something that was successful, had some sort of chart success. Hopefully we're going to get quite a wide range of things, because what I'm going to do, just for my own benefit, because I only like to talk about things that I know, is I'm going to base it around UK chart success. Sorry, I'm not going to be doing US or any other area in the world, but it's just I'm super familiar with the structure of the UK charts, so I'll be able to talk around it a lot better. So that's, some things that was in my mind when I'm putting this together. So I'm definitely going to be bouncing around in terms of, it's not going to be fixed on, say, 50 albums that are 50 years old. The only real focus, if you like, to keep it tight, is I'm going to concentrate on albums that came out in the particular month that I'm putting the video out, and they'll probably be quite close to the date that the video goes out where I can. I need a bit of wiggle room, because obviously anybody that's studied album releases for certain times of the year will know that sometimes you get a quite poor week where you might be sort of struggling to find a fairly, an album that you like, an album that's been successful, that sort of ticks all the boxes. But one of the things that I'll be good here is because I'm jumping around with the decades, so it'll come from my album that's either 50 years, 40, 30, 20, might even go down as low as 10. So that's going to give me a ton of choices of things that I can pick. So that was one rough area. Really, the rationale or the stimulus for putting this together was just wanting to take the albums that turned 20 somewhere different, and somewhere that felt a little bit more personal for me. The other thing is, and this is a sort of sudden creative epiphany I had, is that I was thinking about, if I'm going to be focusing on one album, what's the best way to present it? So I thought, well, I could do it like I do set musings. And so that's what I'm going to do, and that's why I'm calling this album musings. I could have left this until 2023 to put the first episode out, but I want to sort of start winding things up now, because I just so excited about doing it. So the rough form this is going to take each week is, I'll pick an album. At the moment we're in October, so I figured Stevie Wonder was a good choice. I'll show you exactly how this maps onto October when the album was released. So what I'll do is, with the aid of Wikipedia, I'll talk a little bit around the album, and this is going to be the same structure every week basically. So I'll talk around the album with a little bit of help from Wikipedia. I'll try and place the album alongside other albums critically by looking at the album through the lens of Album of the Year. I'll then use the UK charts to give you some idea of, in relation to when the album was released, when it started to get big in the UK. And also I'm going to be looking at any singles that were released off the album as well, in that same sort of area, looking, okay, when did the albums hit the top spot on the UK charts? And like I said, I'm going to use the UK charts because it's simply, I'm so familiar with them, and I know I'm just going to get lost if I'm trying to pinpoint it on the, say, the Billboard 100. Although that's not to say I won't mention charts in passing when I go through the Wikipedia section at the start. I'll be bouncing back to Wikipedia as well in certain slices, just to orientate myself around, say, information about the singles. And then at the end of the video, when I finish up talking about the particular album in question, there'll be a sort of, I'll leave it up to the watchers of the video to decide if they want to stop watching the video at that point. I'll then ramble on for a little bit about some obscure or not obscure musical connection to the album I'm talking about. It might be, it'll always be about some personal experience that I've had that's connected back to the album in some way. It could be through a track, it could be through a cover of a track, something like that. So it'll be a rambly bit at the end before I cut things off. But, there's no obligation to listen or watch through that. If you want to stop off once I stop talking about, in this case, Stevie Wonder and Talking Book, then please feel free. But if you want to stick to the end, you might, hopefully you'll find the story pretty interesting and entertaining. So yeah, Stevie Wonder, Talking Book, amazing album. I've been listening through to this again. Definitely want to listen to this on headphones. Some great studio work going on with this album. So it was released on October the 27th, 1972. And just for a cross-reference, this video is going out on the 26th of October 2022. So a number of different genres here: progressive soul, funk, soul, rock and jazz. Of course, at this point, we're talking about vinyl being probably the primary medium, I suppose, alongside tapes. So, most albums are going to be no longer than about 45 minutes. Chronologically, when you look at where it's placed with his albums, so the album before that was Music of My Mind. The album afterwards was Inner Visions. So as it says in the article, this is his 15th studio album. And at this point in his career, this is probably what a lot of people consider to be his classic period. But, and you'll see in a moment, Stevie Wonder had been putting out material quite a while. He's 15 studio albums in. So yeah, pretty accomplished by this point. So peaked at number 3 in the Billboard Top LPs charts, and number 3 at the end of the year chart. There's a couple of singles off here which we'll come on to in a moment, but it says here Superstition reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and the Hot Soul Singles charts. And the other one that came off of the album was You Are the Sunshine of My Life, another number 1 in the Hot 100. So this is the point in the episode where I will talk a little bit about other charts, but the real in-depth drill down, if you like, is going to be just for the UK charts. Voted number 322 in the 3rd edition of Colin Larkin's all-time top 1,000 albums. This author, just to go off at a side track, this musicologist, however you want to frame him, is one of those authors that sort of repackages a lot of his stuff in different forms. So you'll find a lot of different editions by lots of different publishers which feature Colin Larkin's 1,000 albums list in various formats based on when they came out. He's also got a pretty famous musical encyclopedia which has like thousands of album reviews in it. Rolling Stones have ranked it number 59 in a list of 500 greatest albums of all time. I'm not sure what issue they're talking about, so that's the 2021. Yeah, don't forget with this Rolling Stone, there's at least 2 different versions of this list. I do have the magazine with the more up-to-date one, I believe. So just so you can see his wider discography. So yeah, 1962, and this is just albums. So that was his first studio album. From looking at this doesn't include things like greatest hits, but it has got, you can see here, soundtracks, of which he has done quite a few later on from when this came out. So here's Talking Book, and you can see, yeah, like in terms of album releases, like halfway through for studio albums. So 10 tracks on the album. As I've said, You Are the Sunshine of My Life was one single. The first single in terms of when we come to look at the UK charts is Superstition. Personnel wise, you can see a number of different musicians on different tracks here. So quite a number of people involved with creating this album. Obviously you can see Stevie Wonder himself contributed an awful lot musically, but then we've got people like Ray Parker Jr., electric guitar on Maybe Your Baby. A lot of vocalists here on You Are the Sunshine of My Life. It's no surprise as well. Beautifully arranged track. A real lush feeling to that, actually. A bass and conga there. And just looking down here, you can see and there's Jeff Beck played on the album as well. And then a few additional personnel there. That's the general chart record that Wikipedia has. Again, this information can tend to go out of date. There's the certifications. So just looking at critics score, I'm going to always use album of the year. I could probably use another aggregate site, but this is the one that I tend to use the most. So I've got these ordered in popularity. So they do this sort of hybrid of critic scores that are pulled down from various publications and user scores as well to give this sort of popularity score. So you can see, well, it's 3 albums in from Songs in the Key of Life and Inner Visions, and Songs of the Key of Life came out in 76, so like 4 years after Talking Book. So let's have a look at the actual, the chart history in the UK, because this is super interesting when for me at least, when you place it on some sort of timeline. So this is the official charts stats for him as an artist, and again I'll include links to all of these in the description of this video. But you can see, he had an album in the charts in 68, and it's a greatest hits in 1968. So he was already putting out enough hits worldwide I'm assuming particularly in the States, to actually warrant a greatest hits album. And I know, with some artists, they do put out a greatest hits album often, like back in the day, was often stuck out pretty quick. I can think of a few like rock artists who've had greatest hits albums after about their second or third album, where a record label that they've left is trying to capitalise. But you can see here the record label is consistently the Motown label. He even has a volume 2 by 1972, before Talking Books was even released. But if you scroll down here, you can see from a UK perspective where he had his real like top 10 album entries in the charts. So we've got Songs in the Key of Life got to number 2. That was on the charts for 62 weeks. Hotter Than July also got number 2, and That Woman in Red soundtrack number 2. So those are his highest positions overall on the UK albums charts. And at that point in his career, you can see things were definitely getting better. So this is the one we're talking about today, got to number 16. It was on the chart for 48 weeks, and as we'll see, it re-entered the UK albums charts a number of times. We're just going to expand out this and then you can see. So here we are. Highest chart position was 16, which occurred on the 17th of the 2nd, 1973. So remember, the album came out in October of 72, so it took quite a while to get onto the charts. I mean, that was its highest position, but you can see it didn't get onto the charts until the 3rd of February 73. So quite a bit of lag time there. And again, you can see like there were subsequent chart runs. There was a pretty long chart run where it fell off the charts at the end of April in 73 and then went back on again from May through to end of July. And so, yeah, in and out of the charts pretty much all through 73 and 74 in the UK at the very least. So let's just see what else was hanging around the week that it was on, in its highest position. So if we look down there, you can see it is number 16. So what have we got above it? Well, at that point, the number 1 that week was Don't Shoot Me, I'm the Piano Player by Elton John. And we have No Secrets by Carly Simon, which was obviously working its way up the charts. And there's a pretty good possibility I'm going to feature this album in a later episode, because I think this was released in September of 72. So that was obviously climbing up the charts into 73. We've got Greatest Hits from Simon and Garfunkel, Pile Driver by Status Quo, Moving Waves Focus, Donny Osmond had an album in the charts, Slade, this was a big album for them, Heartbreaker by Free, Catch Bullet 4, Gilbert O'Sullivan, Who Do We Think We Are? That's Deep Purple. And Bridge Over Troubled Water by Simon and Garfunkel. And then 1 point above that, and this looked like it was on its way down the charts, was The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, which was another album that was released in 72. So that had gone up the charts and was coming back down. But yeah, fascinating to see what else was out at that time, or was, in the... At this point, what have they got? This is the top 50 for that week, where it was in its highest position. So look, down here you've got Moody Blues. Oh, the soundtrack to Clockwork Orange. That's a great soundtrack if you haven't had a chance to listen to that. Look at all this stuff, like Made in Japan. Another album I think I might get an opportunity to talk about. That was big in 72. Hunky Dory. This is a fantastic album, Slade Alive. If you've never listened to this album, it's actually probably one of the best live albums there is. They're really good. Don't be put off by the sort of, satiation with glam rock for Slade. They're a really good, hard rock and roll band live. Yeah, look at all these. There's some Motown stuff here as well. and like Space Oddity as well, kicking around. There was a lot of coming and going in the charts around that period for David Bowie, and I think Mark Bolan as well. And you got the Carpenters as well. So you'll often see that phenomenon where a band will release an album, and this seems to happen particularly at Christmas. They'll release an album and people are locked into that album, and then they also start buying another, an earlier album by the band or whatever, or the artist. So let's have a look at the two singles off of the album. So we've got Superstition. B-side, You've Got It Bad Girl. So this was released before You Are the Sunshine of My Life. So let's just check this, because there is a connection with this and Jeff Beck. Yeah, that's what I thought. So I wondered where Beck's version has appeared, because I was aware of it. So let me just read through this, because this is really interesting if you're also a fan of Jeff Beck. So Jeff Beck was an admirer of Wonder's music, and Wonder was informed of this prior to the Talking Book sessions. Though at this point he was playing virtually all of the instruments on the songs by himself, Wonder preferred to let other guitarists play on his records, and he liked the idea of a collaboration with Beck. An agreement was quickly made for Beck to become involved in the sessions that became the Talking Book album, in return for Wonder writing him a song. Between album sessions, Beck came up with the opening drum beat. Wonder told Beck to keep playing while he improvised over the top of it. He improvised most of the song, including the riff on the spot. Beck and Wonder created a rough demo of the song that day. After finishing the song, Wonder decided that he would allow Beck to record Superstition as part of their agreement. Originally the plan was for Beck to release the version of his song first, with his newly formed power trio Beck, Bogart and Appice. However, due to the combination of the trio's debut album getting delayed and Motown CEO Berry Gordy's prediction that Superstition would be a huge hit, really, and greatly increased the sales of Talking Book, Wonder released the song as a Talking Book lead single, months ahead of Beck's version, the latter being issued in March 1973 on the Beck, Bogart and Appice album. Okay, but I suppose you could argue by the time this actually hit the UK charts, this album was probably nearly out. I mean, in terms of the single hitting the charts. So it's interesting. It mentions that he helped write it, but it doesn't list it here, or it doesn't list him playing on here either. So I did know that there was also a version by Stevie Ray Vaughan, actually. Yeah, and I'll talk a bit about this in my ramble at the end, actually, this particular track. Okay, Superstition. So it got to highest position was number 11 in the UK charts, 17th of the 2nd, 1973. So compared to when it was released, released in October. So again, a bit of a lag there. And you can see again it bounced in and out of the charts all the way up to 2015. And I can't remember if I've spoken about this in other episodes where I've analysed UK charts. But some of this might be also due to the track being used in advertising campaigns and things like that, or in a soundtrack to a TV series or anything else like that. So that's sometimes why you get those really wide reappearances timeline wise on certain singles. 26 weeks on the chart, highest position number 11. So in its highest position, what else was on the singles chart? So we got Blockbuster by The Sweet, excellent. Daniel by Elton John, Whiskey in the Jar. Yeah, I'm only pointing out the stuff I really like. You're So Vain, of course. There's Superstition. Dave Edmunds was kicking out stuff at that point. Wishing Well by Free, wow. Hello, Hooray by... Oh, and of course, Hocus Pocus by Focus. Yeah. And so on. I won't go through all of these, but you can sort of see here, we got Crazy Horses by the Osmonds. Moving on to the You Are the Sunshine of My Life. So this was released in March 1973. Let's have a look and see where it gets on charts. Before we do that, is there anything here? So 500 Greatest Songs of All Time in that Rolling Stone list. Again, is that the 2021? Oh, got a Grammy Award for Best Male Pop Vocal, nominated for Record of the Year and Song of the Year. Third number one on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. A few more musicians on this. Okay, so yeah, it's quite late in the year. So what's that? 2nd of the 6th, 1973. You're the Sunshine of My Life got to its highest position in the UK charts. Now, it looks like, if I'm right here, let me just check that. Yeah. No re-entries. It was just a straight run. 11 weeks on the chart. So quite a big difference between this and the previous Superstition. When did it first hit the charts? So that would be 19th of May 1973. So yeah. And what did we have that week? So here we are, number 7. See My Baby Jive was number 1. Can the Can. Susie Quattro number 2. Hellraiser by the Sweet. Wow. Nazareth. Walk on the Wild Side. Rubber Bullets. Wow. Oh, Albatross. That must have been... Was that re-released? That's a great instrumental track. So this is obviously really early Fleetwood Mac, pre Buckingham Nicks. I think, unless they didn't re-record that, did they? I'm not sure now. Let me just check something. Because that wrong-footed me. One of the great things of doing this is that I can do this on the fly when I suddenly notice things like that. Just want to find out. Okay, yeah, it wasn't till 75. Yeah, what threw me there is, and that sometimes happens, sometimes they'll put a weird cover on this. So this is what threw me. But yeah, so let me just see if I can home in on this so I can work out when the original singles came out. So yeah, there's Albatross. That came out in 68. So is that classed then? That must be classed as a re-entry, I suppose. Yeah. Be interesting to know what made that go back in the charts. Anyway, I've digressed. You can see again, like, same artists cropping up as when we just looked at the previous single. Alice Cooper, David Bowie, little Jimmy Osmond. The Osmonds were big in the charts at that point. So there we have it. So at this point, I'm going to stop talking about Stevie Wonder's talking book and have a little bit of a ramble connected to the track Superstition. And it's a weird connection. It sort of leads in some ways to Iron Maiden, but I think it's an interesting story nonetheless. So around about, I would say, in this period here, so it was definitely after Adrian Smith had left Iron Maiden. Of course, he's back in now, and he's been back in since just before the 2000s, and they're now 3 guitarists strong. Anyway, so around this time, I was going to a lot of guitar shows and music shows, and I'd always made the point every year, at least one show a year in London that I would go to. And at that point, Guitar Magazine also were out, the UK Guitarist magazine. And I think it was probably the show that they may have sponsored. There was some connection there. And I don't know if anybody's been to a music show or guitar show. They can be quite variable. Some of the, there's the really big music shows, the huge ones, like, say, is it the North American one? Is it NAMS, I think it's called? But I've also been to a number of little small ones, and often when you go to some of the smaller ones, and you're watching demos, you're shoved into this tiny little room, everything's on really loud, and it might be some guy demonstrating like a Marshall amp or a guitar, or someone doing a drum tech. Well, this particular one that I remember around this time period was in a particular space in London. It's probably somewhere like, might have been Olympia, somewhere like that. But it was a very large venue and had lots of space where they could have like literally full bands. So it was one of the few years where me and the friend that I went with probably spent more time queuing to go and see acts than we did going round and trying out gear. It was a particularly interesting year as well, because there were just so many name people like doing demos of things. And what had actually happened was Nico McBrain was doing a drum tech, but with a backing band. And I'll explain what the connection is with Superstition. So there was a succession of bands on, one of which was a band I didn't recognise, but they did this killer version of Superstition. But it was all done on guitar. It was a 3-piece, I think, with I'm pretty sure no keyboards. So it was all done on guitar. So it's interesting now knowing about the connection with Jeff Beck and why that particular, what ended up to be a piano riff is just so playable on guitar. But yeah, so that's the start of the connection. Was the first band we saw demoing gear with this band where they covered Superstition. Then we move on to the demo by Nico McBrain. Now again, because they're on a big stage, he's got like a full backing band for this. It's not just him talking, being a raconteur, talking about Iron Maiden and maybe doing a bit of drumming, he's actually got a guitarist and bass player there helping out. And the guitarist that was helping him out was a guy called Phil Hilborn, I believe, if I've got that right. I think this is the guy. There were basically two guitarists stroke writers for Guitar Magazine, and the other guy's name escapes me, but I'm pretty sure it was this, because he does have connections with Iron Maiden and Queen as well. So back then he was writing for the UK Guitar Magazine, or the Guitarist Magazine, but he was also providing guitar backup at this particular demonstration that Nico McBrain was involved with. And separate note, he went on to actually play as the house band for We Will Rock You. So you've got Nico McBrain and Phil Hilborn, and they're just running through various songs. Anyway, about, I don't know, 2/3 of the way through, they go, we're going to invite some friends on stage now and do a few songs. So where we were sitting in the auditorium, there were in front of us these two kids. They couldn't have been more than about 13. And you could just tell, but they were wearing Iron Maiden t-shirts. Clearly they were there for Nico McBrain. And they were just losing their minds in the thought of who could come up. Because from what I remember, and this is where my memory might be a bit foggy, I've got a feeling Adrian Smith was kicking around that show doing guitar demos for gear. And so probably like me, this light bulb goes in my head and think, is there going to be some sort of weird Iron Maiden one-off reunion? Because at that point, Adrian Smith was off doing his ASAP thing. So Nick Emerald goes, we're going to pull someone up. Anyway, he pulls up, doesn't pull up Adrian Smith, but Dave Murray comes on stage and joins him. So basically you've got this twin guitar setup with Dave Murray and Phil Hilborn. And if you don't know Phil Hilborn, he's an incredibly accomplished player. He's one of these guys, he's also a teacher, and he can pretty much play anything. So it sounded super tight. And so they rattled through a couple of, I think, Iron Maiden numbers. They may have played one of the instrumentals. But I'm pretty sure, and again, memory's a little bit wobbly on this, they also pulled up, and there's a connection there because of one of the bands that I mentioned in the charts. They pulled up Paul Rodgers from Free. He also has a connection with Queen as well. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it was him. I know it was definitely someone of his gravitas as well. So yeah, it was weird, this all-star band with two teenage Iron Maiden fans in front of us just losing their minds. Also, another interesting slight connection here between this and Stevie Wonder is Jennifer Batten, I think, also did some demos at the end of the show. At that point, we're in the period now of where the shredders have taken over the universe, and we're sort of post Joe Satriani and Steve Vai being super famous, and that it shone the spotlight on all these other players who were actually doing the same thing, and probably for as long, but people just weren't aware of. And you had people like Jennifer Batten, who at that point in her career was playing with Michael Jackson, I believe. Let me just see if it says here. Just trying to remember what her period was with that year. So 1987 to so round that period. And what she was doing is like demonstrating her two-handed technique, and I'm pretty sure at that point she also had that she's got like a device, I think, that helps her mute the strings from the headstock end of the guitar as well. So yeah, it was a pretty cool event. So we've got this band come on that I just can't remember the name of. I don't know if they were even that well known at the time, doing this awesome cover of Superstition, but again playing the riff on guitar as it was originally written. Then this sort of interesting all-stars band with Nico McBain and you have to excuse me, I always forget people's names, Dave Murray, and then possibly Paul Rodgers if I've got that right, but no Adrian Smith. If Adrian Smith had got up at this point, I think the fans in front of me, their heads would have just exploded. And then at the end of the day, Jennifer Batten, who has her own connections with Stevie Wonder, although I think that was a little bit later, I'm not sure. And then, influenced by Jeff Beck, she's appeared on Jeff Beck's album, and it always does fascinate me. And this is what this end ramble that could go on for a while that I'm going to put on the videos is about, is these interesting like musical connections that you stumble across, or I stumble across when I'm putting together these episodes, and I have a thought goes into my head and I think, oh yeah, I remember hearing that song or a cover of it, and then you realise as you dig down there's all these like interrelations going on, all these connections. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I'm looking forward to doing the next one. I don't have my piece of paper in front of me, so I can't do a spoiler for what's next, but all I can say is it's going to be an album from November of either 72, 82, 92, 2002, maybe 2012, but probably 20 years and older, on the tens of years. So thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in the next video.